mistakes. And then he had us.
Lights out! Now you want to get nuts? Come on, let's get nuts.
Tell me something, my friend. You ever play Resident Evil 7?
Yes, in Nightmares. Guys, if you haven't noticed, we rebranded. And if you haven't, if you're not listening to Big Trouble podcast or getting some color, we did mention the rebrand. But if you're hearing this for the first time, you're probably wondering, why is it not the Nemesis Project anymore? The thing is, me and Zach play other games that are kind of like horror related rather than Resident Evil, and we thought instead of just making multiple fucking channels to cater to like games like Silent Hill and the Suffering or the Fear games and all that stuff, like we just wanted to keep it on the same channel. So now it's Lost in Nightmares, and I kind of have a slogan for that. A resident of evil going into. Let me actually get it before I paraphrase my own fucking slogan. A resident of evil entering the void of more nightmares. So it kind of, Resident Evil will always be the flagship for me and Zach, but there will be others. And I thought about thinking like keep it the Nemesis Project as a series names, but I think we're just gonna do Lost in Nightmares Presents, and then we'll just say the series game that we're playing, and that is Resident Evil 7. That's what we're presenting today. And boy, oh boy, has it been a long time? It was so long. I had to ask Zach where our Google Doc was, and I looked at the date, and it was July 19th or the 9th. It doesn't matter the exact, but it was in July when we did Revelations 2. And man, that's a long time. I mean, a lot of shit happened during that time. Life got in the way. And we're almost in December, and we were trying to keep a schedule so that we would have like Resident Evil Village, Resident Evil 8 Village be around this time, but again, shit gets in the way. But here we are, Resident Evil 7. We usually have our own segments here. Before we get into it, Zach, how are you?
I'm doing good. I'm playing Resident Evil 8 Village again after the update. We're supposed to revisit it soon.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't finished because I wanted to finish the game fresh again before I played the DLC stuff. So that's what I'm doing lately.
Cool. Yeah, that's what I'm going to be doing pretty much soon, as far as after we record this, after I put it up. And also, if you're wondering, like the last time we did review Resident Evil Village, you're probably wondering, why does the audio suck? Well, guess what? We're rebooting that review. So if you want to hear the whole episode, you might hear some new things because I've changed my mind on Resident Evil Village. So think of it as a reboot. I'll still keep up the shitty episode that I have up so that you can compare and contrast whatever you could hear. And you'll see that I've changed. I've always done this thing that I need to stop doing, is like getting so hyped for a game when I first play it. Because every time I play a Resident Evil game, I'm always going to be hype. I'm never going to be like, this sucks. I don't think I ever said this sucks to a Resident Evil game before. Maybe like Resident Evil 5, I was confused.
I have.
Yeah.
I have several times.
Yeah, but yeah, we'll get into that. But we're going to do all Resident Evil 7. So let's get into the development stage of Resident Evil 7. I'll go a little bit first because the only news I was able to scrounger, I don't even know if that's a word, I just made it up, is that they had budget problems a little bit, where they were afraid, because this is a new idea, everybody. This game, I mean, we've had first person Resident Evil before, but not to the extent of how good it is in this game. Because you have Gun Survivor, right? That was the
Yeah, that was the first time they had a first person view and, first person oriented gameplay and design and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they had Gun Survivor 2, which is a little bit more like an arcade game.
Mhm.
And then you had, oh man, the name of it's slipping. The one on PS2, the one that we didn't really like. Oh man, that's so terrible.
Yeah. And then I still have like my
Dead Aim. Sorry.
that aim. There you go. My favoritism is just Vincent and all that stuff. Just the dialogue of that game. Vincent, no.
No, RE Survivor is one of my games I'll throw up as like a hey, you know how there's culture around bad movies can be good? Same
Mhm.
thing. Bad games can be good.
And by the way, I'm gonna use MK and Ice Fire video of the gameplay just so that there's some gameplay up and we could point things out while we're doing it. So
Yeah,
I'll bring that up. Don't worry, I have the sound off, so it's not gonna be blaring in people's ears.
sweet.
So there we go. Anyway, but yeah, development budget wise, like they were looking to sell about 3 million units. And I mean, eventually they did, right? Because this game actually blows up because people were hungry for Resident Evil. And the demo I have more fans of as far as like actually really, really excited for a Resident Evil game because when did Resident Evil 6 come out? Like
I believe it's 2012.
2012. And this game came out in 2016, 17.
Yeah, it was 2017.
Yeah. So it's been a long time as
There's
far
a
as
pretty big gap there for a mainline Resident Evil game.
yeah. And that's why we had to do new changes of having first person, and it was just crazy, just super crazy. But what do you have notes wise for development?
Well, I know you're talking about sales projections and stuff, and this game was successful, and I think one of the key things there was they kind of curtailed their expectations to be, a little lower
Hmm.
for sales, and but they also made an effort to like have a smaller budget compared to RE6, but still be like a high budget game. And yeah, initially after RE6 came and went, there was a sequel they were working on for RE6 that was going to play like it and everything, and they pivoted because of the critical reception. So everybody wants to talk about how Japanese devs don't listen to feedback. That's not true. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we're at right now.
Yeah, well, I don't. We wouldn't get this. I think this game was a true test to see if Resident Evil fans are still around. Because if this game did poorly, I don't think we get Resident Evil 2 remake, right?
I don't think we would have, no. Because I think a lot of, uh, you know, a lot of the feelings of what they wanted to do more moving forward hinged on how good this game was going to do.
Mhm.
Because they made an effort, like this, the CEO of Capcom, like this whole process started in January of 2014. The CEO, Kenzo Suimoto, I'm assuming is how you're going to say his name, called Jun Takeuchi, who was the lead producer for Resident Evil 5. And he was also involved in several other big Capcom games, including like Resident Evil 1 and 2, actually.
Mm.
And I mean, Resident Evil 5 is still, I think, the best-selling game in the whole series, believe it or not.
Yeah, because there was a gap between Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 for that to come out.
And I still say there was like the expectation after 4. People were like, this is going to be like 4, right? But even crazier.
Yeah.
And it kind of wasn't.
Well, it was, and it wasn't. Like, it was because of the whole action-y and all that stuff. But the craziness is, obviously Chris Redfield punching a boulder and all of the cutscenes and shit that happened in that game. But go listen to our Resident Evil 5 episode for that.
Mm-hmm. We don't hate it. But,
I only hate the last level because I can't do that. I can't tap the fucking controller.
yeah, I turned the corner on that game. I used to hate that game, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, Takeuchi agreed though, and he agreed to direct, and he came up with a few different ideas to start. He wanted to create cost-effective measures for the art design, and something to cut the budget there, and try to come up with try to go back to like atmospheric horror and item management. He even had like the team. At first, they started with like 10 people. Like sit down and just write down what you think Resident Evil is about, so they could all get on the same wavelength.
Mm-hmm.
And even like took inspiration from like Evil Dead, the original, which you see that kind of in this game.
Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the whole dinner scene from.
That's not mentioned, but like I still feel like somebody watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre and thought, yeah,
Yeah.
because there's a lot of that in this too.
And it's very like, I mean, it's goofy because like they're all sitting around, you're eating rotten food, possibly humans and shit. And like Lucas, who's a crazy son, like the father gets pissed off and like cuts his arm and shit. It gets wild.
He's like, oh god damn it, why'd you have to do that again? Like it's not that big of a deal.
Yeah. And it's funny. I mean, we're going to get into this a little bit later, but it's funny that happens. Like when you first play the game and you don't know any lore, you're just like, oh, what the fuck? Like, where am I? Like, what is this family? But then you like get into the lore, and obviously when you get the village and all that stuff, you learn about the mold and what happens when your body parts get cut off. I mean, you learn about it in this game too, but
yeah,
it's wild.
But yeah, they also toured haunted houses in Osaka. So
Really?
and they recorded footage of them like going through the house so they could come up with the general aesthetic they were kind of looking for, which that also makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of like how the whole gestation of it started, though. Then this is where like the RE engine stuff starts to come into play. They get more heavily into development and throughout the year. They had an artist, Makoto Fukui, came up with this process called photogrammetry. It's like I just learned this word like a couple hours ago, and it's still kind of hard for me to say because to me vowels in different places. But it's this process where you take digital pictures of like real objects or people, and you can convert them into 3D objects for games. And I wasn't aware that was something that you could even do.
Yeah, me either.
And that's pretty cool.
That's why when I read that stuff before, I was like, I'm not going to be ignorant and like talk about this because I'll just say the word and be like, yeah, they did this. And I have no idea what they're talking about. I could have researched a little bit more. But truthfully, when I play games, I mean, the only thing I care about is if the game works or not and if it's fun. But it's interesting. I will say what you said is interesting.
I like to peek into what the development was like for a game. You learn a lot of interesting stuff about it there.
Oh yeah, the haunted house thing is interesting to me because this building or this house that you're in, it messes with your mind a little bit because like you're in the beginning part of the stages, you're like, oh, this is just like a, I don't know, maybe 1-story, 2-story house, but it's like a whole damn like swamp area house that gets bigger and bigger.
It's a property. It's like a family property.
Yeah.
It's like some of those families where like they've had land passed down several generations and they own like, I don't know, 100 acres.
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. It's like they got money, but it doesn't really look like they have money. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like one of those kinds of families.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, with this photogrammetry thing, this halved the design time for typical drawing and 3D modeling from scratch. And they threw out an example, like what would typically take 40 days to complete like an object or something, took 20. with this method. But a studio had to be constructed to accommodate this technology, and they bought like 150 high performance digital cameras so they could do all this. And then I guess they tried to get this to work with the MT framework engine, which, you know, that was Capcom's engine for all their games in the generation before this.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't work on PS4 though. So they were like, okay, this isn't working. And that's when Takeuchi was like, all right, let's make a new engine. But he made a really interesting mandate not to create an engine for the engine's sake. And they said what he meant by that was you only make mechanics that would serve a purpose. And what I think they sort of meant also was we're not making an engine to try to sell to other people.
Yeah.
We're making our engine for our game. And yeah, it was also his idea, like, this is going to replace MT framework. We'll produce new games with this engine, but we're not selling it to anybody.
Well, literally when this engine came out, this is when Capcom boomed. Literally.
Boomed
because,
again, yeah.
Because it's like, oh, here's Resident Evil 7. We're since it was did well, you get an RE2 remake, and we're still going through that stage of Village and Resident Evil 4 remake and 3. And then you have like Monster Hunter games that I believe also used the RE engine, correct?
I think so. Devil May Cry 5 used it as well.
Mm-hmm.
Used it to great effect too.
Yeah, so it's like, because of that guy's decision, it literally essentially kind of saved Capcom, because it was on a downward trend for a while.
Yeah, I remember there being some kind of uncertainty about like the health of the company back then because of just how RE6 didn't measure up to their projections, which is still insane to me. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I remember there was people were kind of wondering, oh, is Capcom going to downsize? Is it good? You know, nobody really knew what was going on back then.
Mm-hmm.
But adjustments needed to be made to the engine in the game because the build they had at the end of 2014 kind of was laggy a little bit because it was too photorealistic, apparently.
Oh, man.
And I'm kind of wondering what that looks like, because PT was pretty photorealistic, which we'll get into in a sec about PT in this game.
Why is that bad, though? Like, I think you would terrify more people, right? If it was photorealistic.
Yeah, I think so. It was just like the game's performance suffered for it.
Oh, okay, I get you.
Yeah, it's like they were having like frame rate lag.
Gotcha.
But yeah, I'm kind of wondering what that looked like though, because like I was saying, like I think this game is pretty photorealistic already too.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't even know what version this guy's playing. I don't know if he's playing the enhanced on PS5 or the high spec PC version or what.
Let's see.
But
it's on PC.
4K, 60 FPS. Okay, so he's playing basically the PS5 equivalent.
Yep.
But yeah, then they were asked if they'd consider doing something for Project Morpheus, which was Sony's codename for their PSVR.
Mm-hmm.
And initially they didn't even think about doing that. And they're like, well, I guess we'll come up with something. So they kind of adapted something out of RE7's development for it, which is the kitchen demo.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I remember that, yes.
Yeah, I remember people were really talking about that back then. That came out in like 2015 when they released the kitchen demo. But at the time, nobody knew it was related to RE.
Mm-hmm.
They had no idea. There's like, so they released some kind of spooky teaser where we watched a guy get murdered in front of us.
Yeah, it was kind of running off of the high of PT, right? Because when PT, it was like, oh, here's this like tech demo that you're going to be going in a loop. And then, you find out it's a Silent Hills game that never came out or came to be. There's the whole Kojima Konami thing. So like when Capcom did the kitchen thing, I mean, there was rumbles. They were like, is this like somewhat of a Resident Evil prototype? And like people were just like, nah. Like they weren't even thinking about it because Resident Evil 6 was a bad game. and when it got revealed that it was a Resident Evil 7 demo, man, all the how many times did you play the Resident Evil 7 demo?
That was the beginning hour demo,
Yes.
and that came out in June of 2016.
Mm-hmm.
I played it, I want to say 3 or 4 times, and then I played it one more time after they updated it. So I guess 5.
So this was, they didn't really say anything. Like when the game came out, you don't know how to solve the demo because there was a puzzle when the update came out of the mannequin. I forgot it was like a finger or whatever.
It was like a dummy finger.
Yeah. And you were able to get that in the first part of the demo. So there was a lot of like Reddit shit going on because PT was also a Reddit thing where people solved it. And that's what we thought the Resident Evil 7 demo was, is that, oh, we got this item and there's no instructions on how you beat this demo. So maybe there's something that we have to activate. And I literally, every inch of that demo, I've hit the action button on walls, on furnitures. I tried to combine shit to certain items and stuff, and it never worked. And it eventually, Capcom was so fucking quiet that they didn't say shit. They just said, wait for an update. And then when the update came out, that's when you solved it. But it got a lot of people talking. I was excited.
Yeah, I remember doing that too. I was combing through that demo, trying to figure everything out, see if I missed anything.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like PT, how I obsessed over that. But what was kind of cool about this was they did say before it released, like, it's going to feature a protagonist that's not involved in the main story of the game. It is connected to it, but it's not the main character and all that stuff. And it had like 8 different endings too. That was like a whole other thing. Now 6 of them are kind of similar in how they happen, or 5 of them. It's like how when you pick up the phone, and I think it's Zoe. I can't remember now. It's been too long since I played it. Some woman is on the phone and she says a line. She's like, "Who are you?" And then Clancy, the guy you're playing as from the Sewer Gators shit, he's like in various other parts of RE7. He's like, "What?" And then she'll say something to you. There's like 6 different lines or whatever. And then Jack Baker will grab you from behind and knock you out, and that's the end. But there's also an infection. Welcome to family, son. Yeah, there's also an infection ending where you get infected with the mold shit. And then there's the real ending where I forget what happens in the real ending, actually. I think you kind of get away, sort of, but you still get caught.
Yeah.
This was also where you saw Remy Baker, who was they called her the ghost girl that would randomly appear in the house. And that was another thing that made people think about PT and how this was like, because there were people that were also saying they just ripped off PT, like it was a bad thing. And at the time, people were like, I don't know if there should be ghost shit in Resident Evil, and I agree. I don't like it when they get more into supernatural kind of stuff. But I guess there ended up not really being a ghost. So it would
have been interesting, but like you had to put like a weird twist on it. Like somehow, I don't know, the mold traps a soul or whatever. Like that would have been funny if the mold like traps your soul.
The mold traps your soul.
Yeah.
But I remember we were kind of like, positing about like what the hell this game's going to be like at the time. And I remember like you were cautiously optimistic about it, I think. You're like kind of worried they were going to go with this supernatural angle because it still wasn't real clear at the time what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I think it's still going to be like something will be based in science somewhere. And thankfully that's what they did. So,
yeah.
But that's all the development notes I got.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you a story a little bit later when we get deep into the episode. But like the total opposite happened for both this game and Village for me. Like when this game came out and I played it, I was like, it was okay. Like I didn't really like the mold monsters and the battles in this, and I was really down on that. And then I was really high about Village, and now I've changed, which we will talk about. So let's get into the meaty flesh of the game, and let's talk about general gameplay and design discussions. We kind of touched on the design a little bit, but the atmosphere is what really sells this game.
Oh yeah.
It's so creepy being on this property with swamp and fog and like rotted food and shit. It's like a combination of Texas Chainsaw Massacre and also Friday the 13th a little bit, because you have that like campground feel a little bit of being near the swamp and woods, and then you have this crazy ass family.
That or Evil Dead too. You know, Evil Dead takes place out in a cabin.
Yeah, that's another movie.
Yeah.
This-
It could have set up for a creepy ghost person or something. Which, that real quick sidebar, I did want to go over the content that was cut
oh yeah,
from the development, which is not a lot here, which I thought is kind of odd because I feel like this. I thought this game would have more twists and turns in its development, but it didn't. It seemed to have like a more focused, concerted effort to it.
well they had more of like it's kind of risk taking what they did in this game, and I think they were just like, we want something new, and something that it still it respects the atmosphere of Resident Evil, which I think they nailed. So like the only thing that they were probably turning on is probably hoping to sell this game, which they did.
Yeah,
And the soundtrack was amazing, by the way. I just wanted to point that out.
certainly.
Yeah.
But there was a third person camera considered as well. But they just, there wasn't enough time, I think, so they just stuck with first person.
Mm-hmm.
There was characters that didn't make it. Creepy twins. That's what they're called, creepy twins.
Like The Shining.
Yeah, I think they were supposed to be boys though.
Mm.
A dog. Apparently, one of the twins or something had a dog, but it wasn't any further than that. It was just a concept drawing. There was a dog.
Were
And
they?
Huh?
Did they try to cut any like main line characters? Was like Ada Wong like there somehow?
No, it seemed to me like they had all the core characters figured out, except certain concepts kind of turned into a new character.
Mm.
Like there was also a servant, like some kind of like just, I guess, not quite a butler, but somebody that just does chores and shit.
Mm.
And he was carrying around the spooky lantern that Marguerite has that she eventually got, and her design changed too. Initially, she looked like almost like a Victorian era old lady. It was weird.
Mm.
Remy Baker is the interesting one though. That's the ghost girl. In beginning hour in the kitchen demo. And to me, this settles the PT debate where they're like, they ripped off PT because there's a creepy ghost girl or something.
Mm.
The concept and design for Remy internally was made up in March of 2014. PT didn't come out until August of that year.
So they could. So PT stole that.
If that's what you want to say, yeah. But I looked at some of the closer up images for Remy Baker and like in the concept art, and honestly, it's a pretty creepy design.
Mm.
I'm after like seeing better pictures of her and shit. I'm kind of like a little disappointed she didn't get to stay in the game.
I guess what do you think that would, like, how would she be intertwined in this story that we have now, you think? Do you think they would have just had like she died because of her name's Evie, right? I keep forgetting.
Evelyn. Yeah.
Evelyn. Do you think Evelyn somehow like killed her and she's haunting the house because of Evelyn?
I think at the end of the day, she's not really a ghost. They just called her that. Like fans just called her Ghost Girl.
Oh, okay.
I think she just was infected by the mold in a whole other way, kind of thing.
It's kind of
She
like
looks.
Hollow Man when he lost like and then like puts on that like fake skin kind of
God
thing.
damn it! That fucking shot of her when she finds you in
Yeah.
the crawl space that got me for a second. I'm like, oh shit! She's like right up there in my face.
Yeah, the atmosphere in this game, man, is fucking crazy. Especially like when you go into the house as Ethan, and like Mia, like you look down the stairs of the basement and you're just like, fuck. Mia's
Oh
gonna.
yeah, when you go to the basement of that house, it's kind of like when you find out there's a basement in the mansion of RE1.
Mhm.
You're like, oh god damn, what does a basement look like in this game? It's kind of like the same thing.
Mhm.
No other game had a creepy basement up until this one.
Yes.
Um, let's see. There was also the scene I was talking about is when Ethan finds the VHS tape of Mia and she's trying to get away and she's in the crawl space and Marguerite finds her in the crawl space. It goes dark and then all of a sudden she's just like right there in front of you. It's like, oh shit.
Yeah. By the way, like that's a good touch, the VHS tapes, because think about it. Like when we go play the old games, we're going through reading files and diaries, which they still do have in this game, but very few. So
There's not a lot to them either. They're usually pretty short.
yeah, and the VHS is kind of replacing that. We're just
Yeah.
like, oh, what happened here? And then you see the Mia tapes and all that stuff, and when you get to the band footage, that's another story as well.
Yeah. Two other things real quick. There was a breathing mechanic where apparently you had to hold Ethan's breath to be able to sneak past or escape from certain kind of enemies.
Oh, I wish that was in there.
Yeah. Well, Takeuchi cut the mechanic because he noticed during playtesting that players would hold their breath as well when they would do that. And he thought that would get tiresome. And he was also afraid it would cause somebody to have hypoxia or something possibly. So I kind of don't blame him for cutting that actually when he sees that. But I guess it was like an involuntary action. You know how like when you play platformers, I don't know if this happens to anybody else but me, but I've heard other people experience that. You know how like when you take a jump and your whole body will tense up?
Yes.
It's like that, I think. I think some people were having like that kind of reaction with the breathing.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you notice, like when you watch other people in person play video games, sometimes they get too into it,
Yeah.
and they try to replicate, especially people that don't game really often and they play racing games and they move the controller.
It's
Well,
like it's like in movies and shit from the 90s when they're like, "Oh, I'm playing games."
Yes. People get like that, man. I mean, I've played a lot of games, so like I'm used to it. But I could totally see myself mentally thinking like, oh, I better be quiet while I move past Mr. Baker, and maybe I might go and then press the button. I kind of do that when you play like first person shooters when you're a sniper and you just like you hold your breath and then you shoot.
I still, like I was saying, I get the involuntary tense up on big jumps in games. I even 2D games where you take like those shitty leaps of faith and shit. When I play racing games like Forza, I will kind of like rock my chair, my whole body like I'm in the car, because in real life when you're taking turns like that, your whole body's moving with the car's body.
Yeah, and you don't get a you don't you're when your mind and your body knows that you're like not in a car and you're doing these like fucking sick ass turns, you're just like you kind of like fuck up a little bit, so you have to like get into it a little bit.
And I'm aware of it when it happens, but then I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm into playing this game. But they cut the breathing, and then there was a D series file that got cut that was, I think, supposed to explain what the hell is up with the D series virus in a slightly different way. And it reacted with how it reacted with different subjects besides Evelyn, and I don't know, they just didn't include it for some reason. So
Yeah.
that's all the cut content. Now we can get to the true flesh
The true meaty flesh.
or the molded flesh.
The molded flesh. Plot wise, is really interesting because we have two kind of plots going on here. Because in the beginning, Ethan, turns on a videotape and Mia says, "Don't come here," and kind of warns him, and he kind of ignores her and still goes anyway. He's like, "Oh, because that was like what 2 years later."
I think it was 3. Like his friends, like he's talking to somebody on the phone, like one of his friends, I guess. He's like, "Yeah, I know it's been 3 years, but I gotta know. I gotta find out." I'm like, "Damn, okay."
Yeah. So he goes into this house and eventually he gets attacked by the family, and that's where we get that iconic scene where they're all sitting around like it's the Last Supper or whatever, and you're eating all this rotten food and possibly humans, because based off of the DLC, it kind of looks like a bunch of people came there and things happened along the way. So that they're possibly eating people as well. Then you have like the other side story about Mia, and the company that is doing the Series D or the Evelyn virus is called Connections, right?
The Connections, yeah.
Yeah. And the Connections, you find out that Mia is like working on it with other scientists and stuff, and she's like the handler of Evelyn. And Evelyn kind of like grows fond of her and starts calling her mommy.
Yep.
And it's a little weird when it comes to that, because a lot of evil entities that are like childlike, they're all like mommy, and then eventually they try to get Ethan to become daddy and all that stuff. And it's interesting. But Jack Baker in his fucking game was amazing. his personality is funny. The battles that you have with him is great, especially the garage.
The garage and the chainsaw duel. You have a fucking chainsaw duel with this guy.
Yes.
It's just ridiculous. And they're like, yeah, like that whole garage scene is what really sets the tone for the game.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to get out of there, and he's like, "Woo, let's go for a ride, boy!" And he's like punching the fucking window out. He's like, "We're gonna have some fun." He's like trying to run you into like a bunch of fucking rebar and shit.
Mm-hmm.
And you barely dodge it, and then like you think he's dead because he looks like he gets impaled, but he's not dead. And then he grabs your gun. He's like, "Come on, fucking finish me, boy!" And he like shoots himself with your gun. And he's just like, "Fuck!" Because like, what other reaction would you have? I guess. And that kind of sets the tone for this whole game. Is that and the cop, that fucking scene always cracks me up when the deputy shows up and he's like, "You gotta get me out of here, man. There's crazy people." And he's like, "Hold on, slow down. Who are you? Do you live in this house?" He's like, "No, I'm trying to tell you, I don't live here." And he's just like, "You gotta give me your gun." It's like, what the fuck? It's not gonna work.
Yeah, I kind of wonder if that was just like Japanese people writing that and thought it was like like a natural thing that would happen where cops would give civilian guns because they're in dangerous situations. But like when he first said it, I'm like, "Oh, that's not happening."
I guess I can excuse it because he's just so addled because he's been abducted and he got made to eat a bunch of possible human meat and he's creeped out. So he's not on his A game mentally right now. But he gives him that little fold up knife. He's like, "Fucking pocket knife." That always cracks me up.
Yeah. And the thing that was outrageous to me about Ethan is like when Mia attacks him, right? When he finally finds her, and clearly you could tell that something's going on with her. And you get to one part and she fucking cuts your hand off.
Yeah.
and Ethan still wants to help her. I'm like, I would have been like, all right, I can clearly see that you don't want me. I'm out.
Let me get my hand back, but I'm out.
Yeah. So like
You-
that stuff kind of like I rolled my eyes, but I'm like, this is just it's cheesy and I like it. This is what Resident Evil is all about. You have your serious and your horror and your survival horror and all that stuff, but then you're always gonna get that cheesiness, which welcome to the family, son. And then like you but he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it.
He's not eating it, Jack. He's not eating it.
Yeah.
Freaking out. Oh, God. But yeah, like I guess in this, I'm not really sure what the status of their relationship is at the time, but I guess he was intending to marry her, so
Yeah.
that's like, well, I mean, that's your wife, I guess, more or less. So would you go to some abandoned fucking town when your dead wife writes you a letter? I guess would she send you a fucking recording after she's been missing for so long? Would you go try to find her?
I'd probably call the police.
Listen, we all know the police aren't going to do shit like this guy did, this deputy guy.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He
Here's a pocket knife.
He wouldn't even give him his gun. By the way, rest in peace to Ethan's car. He had a sick ass car and it got destroyed in this game.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. It looks like an old fucking Challenger or something, I like to think, but yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, Jack Baker's great in this game. Something I noticed when I was playing through again recently for this this review was like I felt a lot more tension from him chasing me than like any of the other characters in these newer games.
Yeah, like when Lady D and Mr. X and all that stuff.
Mr. X is a little scarier than Lady D.
Mm-hmm.
The problem with Lady D is she's too slow. If she were faster, I think it would be scarier.
By the way, I'm watching this video of MK Ice and Fire. I didn't know that shit was in that fireplace. The fuck?
The steroids?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Oh, did you not do the little picture treasure hunt things?
No.
Oh, that's how you get Ethan to turn to Scott Steiner.
Oh, really?
That's how he gets steroids every time you do the little. I mean, I think you get something else one other time, but usually that leads to you finding steroids, which increases your max health.
Mm-hmm.
It enables Ethan to not be fat anymore.
He's fat.
He's fat. See, yeah. Like, oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna bring up because of the video right now. Another thing that I like that they brought back is like these themed fucking doors that you need to find keys for, like the Scorpion key or the Raven key.
Yeah, that's kind of the whole thing about this game is like the design and stuff is like they really kind of took it back to where it started. It's like a return to form. It's like you have more purposefully designed locations and spaces like how it used to be.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that thing before where you remember the whole layout of the mansion, right? You could draw a map of that right now if somebody asked you to, probably. You could do the same thing for the police station. Everybody remembers the police station.
Mm-hmm.
You'll remember the Baker house, the Baker property, because it's all designed like that.
Yeah.
And it kind of helps that it's not as sprawling like the different houses and buildings are, but the whole property is sprawling.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like you remember the guest house, you're gonna remember the main house, the old house that Marguerite mostly occupies, the greenhouse,
mm-hmm.
so on and so forth. There's a lot of house. I don't think you'll really remember the salt mines. That's kind of like the only one that's not very memorable because a lot of it looks the same. It's just you're in a fucking cave. Like there's and that's not really like me criticizing it, saying it sucks. It's just like, there's always going to be one spot that's not memorable.
Mm-hmm. I think what disappoints me, like, listen, like the family's great when you encounter every last one of them, like Jack, Marguerite, and Lucas, and all that stuff. It's interesting. I love the theme. I mean, Lucas is more of like the jigsaw, where
Lucas's house too is another one that's like you're gonna remember that area as well.
mhm. And Jack Baker, who's just like this never-ending threat that's always keeps on coming, especially in one of the download contents. Um, and where was I going with this? Shit, I had a thought and then it went.
You had criticism somewhere in here.
Oh yeah, the things that I didn't like was the enemies. I didn't like the mold enemies at all. I will give them credit where credit's due. They did change that in the download content where I appreciated the mold monsters after playing DLC, but they should have been in the main game of what we saw on the DLC, because the mold monsters, like the original the starting mold monsters, are kind of like your zombies. They had like a liquor type that was like a on all fours and stuff that was fast. And then you had like the blow up ones and all that stuff. And I just thought that was unoriginal for me. I didn't really dig it that much.
It's probably a weakness in this game is the enemy monster design. There's not a lot of variation to it, especially for a while at first.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you got Jack Baker who stalks you in the main house for a while, and then when you go to the basement, that's when you encounter your first mold monster,
Mm-hmm.
which is and this kind of plays into that trope that Resident Evil got stuck in for a while, where they wanted to have these enemies that were just like these fleshy, amorphous, fucking blob enemies. That they're not. There's no real distinct feature to them other than there's some kind of blob or flesh, but they'll have different forms or something, which you'll see later in the game. They have some different forms. There's like a mold monster with a shield,
Yeah.
and there's a mold monster that jumps at you. And that's kind of it. That's the only ones you really encounter in the main game. There's other stuff though. There's like the bugs when you go in the old house. The bugs, which you have to like build a shitty flamethrower to like destroy their nests so you can navigate the house. Which is that's something that sounds like you do in an old Resident Evil game. What other enemies are there? I think that's kind of it. Other than like when you get stalked.
Yeah.
And the boss fights that you have.
Yeah, that's what kind of like annoyed me a little bit, is just like you're facing against these big enemies, which again I think all of them had their great moments, especially with their whole theme. Like Marguerite was the bug monster lady.
She's
that was
creepy. I'd argue
yeah.
she's the creepiest out of all of them.
Yeah, because Jack has more of a personality and like is very fond of you. Marguerite just wants you to eat her food. Damn it! Like,
Marguerite has a personality. She's very upset.
yes, and angry.
She's upset all the time.
And Lucas, which backstory wise, like he was in trouble with the law before Evelyn came and pretty much destroyed his family. So that's why he gets like sick and twisted like Jigsaw and puts people through these Jigsaw type of games and shit.
Yeah. I will say that the mold creatures by themselves, like the base one, like when you go in this basement and it's full of these things, like that's pretty creepy.
Mm-hmm.
And they're kind of creepy because they sway and they have kind of unpredictable movements. Where the way they'll move, then all of a sudden they'll go this way and they'll lunge at you, or they'll stretch their limbs, and you don't really expect that. You still can't really predict it exactly, even when you play the game a bunch.
And you really could. I mean, obviously here when the mold monster's on the ground, but when it's standing and it's just sponging your fucking bullets, which I was playing on normal. It takes about 5 or 6 handgun bullets to take the enemy down, and again, just like the predictability of where it's swaying. Because other games, like you learn, like I need to save my ammo, so I need to get around this enemy and not shoot. It's hard in this game. You
It's
literally have
tough.
to, you literally have to find the right frames and pixels to get around the mold monsters. So I guess that's kind of a plus in a way if you want challenge.
Plus, if you're in a hallway, like some of these cramped spaces, like if you're going to be watching the footage, uh, they'll take up a hallway and you're not going to be able to get past them. You're trapped.
Mm-hmm.
So they're kind of big too. That's the other thing. Unless there's those little small ones that you can kill really easily, but they're fast.
Yeah, they could gangbang you at
They
a certain
can.
if you get cornered.
But if you aim at the head of the molded, that's like their weak spot. That's the problem though, is being able to hit it because that's the hardest spot to hit.
Mm-hmm.
So even with like a handgun, if you can land usually about three to four handgun shots at the head, they usually die instantly. But yeah, I agree though. That's kind of the lack of different monsters or creatures is a weakness in this game, but it's not a major one just because the rest of the game's so good.
Mm-hmm. It
It's not like
balances out.
it's not like Resident Evil Revelations, which is just kind of like it's pretty good.
Yeah.
Because it's like I was saying, this is like a throwback game in terms of like the design and stuff. They have like the memorable locations. They have like weird puzzles. They have like these weird puzzles where you get like an object and you're supposed to create like a shadow on a painting a certain way, and that opens a fucking secret passage in their house.
Yeah. I've actually watched people that normally don't play Resident Evil games. They're just like, why would this be in here and open this door? And I'm just like, oh man, you haven't played Resident Evil. like this is what makes Resident Evil games is all these wacky things. Like imagine Resident Evil 2 in this museum that is a police station. And you have all these rooms with different keys and you have to get gold medallions to like open up a passage. We love that. Like that's what makes Resident Evil great in my opinion.
I always said if I ever like won the lottery or something, or we got a lot of money, I would like design a new house and I'd put weird fucking secret passages in it like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I will give it credit at least to the old games where they kind of try to explain why there's weird fucking puzzles and passages. Like, you know, in the first game they said, oh, George Trevor was contracted by Oswald Spencer to make it because he liked weird spy shit like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he's an eccentric billionaire or something. So that makes sense. And then RE2, they blamed it more on Chief Irons for being a weirdo.
Yeah.
It's like he utilized all the old museum shit that was still there, but he also was a weirdo who had secrets, so he created a bunch of shit to hide shit from everybody.
And plus he was getting paid by Umbrella. So like, oh, we're going to do this stuff in the underground laboratory under your fucking police station. So buy this property.
But you know, here in RE7, there really isn't a very good explanation for that here.
No, they just throw shit at you.
Like Lucas is the only one that is like, but he wouldn't do that throughout the whole property. He wouldn't create weird shadow puppet puzzles and shit. He likes to make Saw shit where you're like, oh, you tripped a wire. It's like, guess which door, dumbass? And then you picked the wrong. It's like, that was the wrong door. You got shot with like a crossbow bolt or something.
Or you play blackjack and your fucking fingers are getting cut off.
You play blackjack and the other guy dies and he just starts like weekend at birdieing him. And he's like, I thought I was done. He's like, you're not done yet. But yeah, you know what's funny though is like I've noticed, you know, when this game came out and it, I had kind of a somewhat similar reaction to you when I played it. I had a delayed reaction to it. At first, I was like, "This is better than what I thought it was going to be." It was pretty good,
Mm-hmm.
and then that was kind of it. But then when I played it again, I liked it, appreciated it a lot more. But I noticed some people, like in the fandom, they don't like this game, and sometimes it's for really dumb reasons.
Yeah, it's like, oh, I want to fix the camera back. Like you're never getting that.
That's not come. That's not going to come back. But thankfully, there's an emerging market for games like that, so you'll be able to get that back.
Mm-hmm.
But like, it's for the first person reason. It's not the fixed camera. Some people say it's flat out not a Resident Evil game, and I've never heard them explain that. But I posit this question to you: is it a Resident Evil game?
Yes, and it's mainly because they still do kind of link everything to the main story, even though not using main story. They also have, we just explained most of it. Is the puzzles has that. The inventory system is similar with some tweaks to it, where you could have that quick, equipping option of the
Mhm.
guns. The saving, you have save rooms that are back again that
Yep.
are great. And the atmosphere itself of being creepy in this house and stuff. So like it has the ingredients. And this is what I really hate about like certain series and fandoms, whether it be movies or TV or games, is when it's not sticking. And I'm at fault for thinking that, especially, because a lot of people love Resident Evil 4. And I was one of those people who are like, oh, this is not Resident Evil. So I totally used to be in that crowd. Uh, but come on, like the Ethan Winters, I will say at least in Resident Evil 7 was kind of interesting with Evelyn and Mia and the Bakers and this, the connections and Blue Umbrella.
Yeah. We'll get into that here in a bit. But it's like I was saying this, and I was sticking up for this game after I played it initially when it had just come out. I was saying like I don't understand how people don't like this game that claim that they're fans of the series or whatever, or they say, "Oh, it's not a Resident Evil game." When I'm like, this game has more in common with the older games, and I would argue is more of a a classic style Resident Evil game than any other game's been since after Resident Evil 4 came out.
I
So,
I'll throw this at you and tell me what you think. I think a lot of people now keep in mind. I know a lot of Resident Evil fans are like, no, we want a linear experience, but a lot of people in the gaming world have been playing open world games, right? Where
mhm.
there's a lot of shit to do, there's a lot of quests. Do you think people were thinking that they were going to get this big world of Resident Evil that they were going to explore?
No, I don't. I don't really think anybody had expectations like that for it. I think I don't know what people really did expect. I guess there was a subsect of the fans because again, this fandom's like pretty divided on opinions and stuff. You had some fans that thought, "Oh, we'll get a follow up to Resident Evil 6, and it'll be like that," and that didn't happen. Then
Hmm.
you have people that like Resident Evil 4 a lot, and 5 and 6 are mechanically similar to 4, but they're not like 4. I mean, we can agree on that, right?
Yeah.
Uh, the only thing it has in common is just the mechanics. Then you got the old school fans that don't want anything unless it's fixed camera and shit.
I will say majority of the old school fans like me and you were kind of like, oh, this is interesting. This is the direction that we could possibly fall in on. Uh, and then you have obviously the hardcore fixed camera, and still want to have PS2 graphics or whatever.
I'm gonna call us true fans. I'm gonna do some gatekeeping here. True fans of this series will play every game in it, and they'll follow the series through all the changes.
Hmm.
But like, you'll appreciate the roots of it and want the games to be like as much as they can be like the roots of it.
Yeah.
That's why it's like I don't like when it got real far out in the weeds and this crazy action shit. I still really like Resident Evil 4 because I respect it just as a complete game.
Mm.
It's very good and it has some atmosphere to it. But yeah, this one went back to like the OG in terms of like the feeling and the design and all that.
Yeah. Um, I want to bring this up because this links to story, and I guess we could talk about this character. So when you're in this game, right? especially in the beginning before Mia attacks you and cuts off your arm or hand. You get a mysterious phone call, and I will say in the beginning, I thought this was like Ada calling or whatever. Like, what are you doing in there? I see you, and automatically I thought this house was being monitored by Umbrella, and somehow Ada Wong was part of it. But no, this character is the daughter of the Bakers, named Zoe, and she kind of helps you to the point where she needs to be saved in a certain area part of the property. And the writing on this kind of, I was like, why is she mad? So there's a point in the game where Ethan gets an antidote. He had to use it, but then he had one more left, and he rescued Mia and had Zoe there at the same time, and only could give it to one person. I chose Mia because obviously the whole reason why I went out into this crazy fucking property is to get her. So I'm bringing her home. Out of I've never done the other way around. I've always
I did the first time I played it. I chose Zoe, and I was like, hang on, because you thought like, oh, is this Ada? Is there somebody monitoring it? As soon as I heard that syrupy, sweet Southern accent, I was suckered in. Because somebody else did a Southern accent well in voice acting, and that's one of the hardest ones to do. And I was like, oh boy, I like her. I like her attitude.
But the dialogue in that, like, I guess she's upset that, like, obviously the only antidote that was there she can't have, and she's gonna possibly die. So I get she's like kind of upset on that. But she kind of gives an attitude to fucking Ethan where he's like, she's mad that he chose his wife, even though she said, I understand what you did, but she still gets like, there ain't gonna be no help around here. Like, I'll be gone.
To her, I mean, yeah, she's probably gonna die and there is no help, and I get it. I understand her perspective too, because it's like, especially after you play the lost footage, the banned footage.
And Zoe.
Of her. Yeah. Well, in the banned footage, when you play her thing,
yeah,
you realize she's been on this property surviving, dodging everybody that's been looking for her for like months.
Mm-hmm.
She's been surviving on that property for months.
Yeah.
And she had a chance to escape by helping Ethan, and she was helping him. And it was like, well, she went all that effort to help him, and she didn't really get anything out of it. She's the one that told him about the serum and all that other stuff. So I get why she would be upset.
Yeah.
So I don't really think it's bad writing. I just think it's
no. I wasn't saying it's bad writing. I just think it was like fucking. It was outrageous because this is one of the games where I kind of like talked to the characters even though they couldn't hear me. Like Mia, like bitch, I came all the way here and you fucking cut my arm off. Fuck you, bitch. And and maybe I should have picked Zoe for her cutting my fucking hand off, but like at the same time, I'm like, no, I know you're normal now. So like, I'm gonna choose you because I came here for you, and I feel like with the time, like even though Zoe did help us. And I appreciate with Zoe helping us, but at the same time, I'm choosing who I love.
I wanted to love Zoe.
There you go.
But it's okay because they fix it later.
Yes. Which means choosing me as the canon one.
Yeah, well, choosing me as the canon one anyway because of 8 and everything. Oh, now he's in the old house. I guess it's probably my second favorite area in the game.
Yes.
Let's see. What else did you want? Do you want to go over anything else in the story of characters?
Well, characters wise, I think we touched up on a lot. Before we get into the DLC, I just wanted to bring up some things in the main story. When we get into the salt mine, the ending felt rushed. Do you think the ending felt rushed a little bit?
I think there was an element of it getting rushed a little bit when you get in the mine area.
Mm-hmm.
And then you end up in the final showdown deal, which I thought was okay after you got to that point. and it was a different boss fight too.
Yeah.
You can't really. I guess that's another thing is like these bosses, they're all pretty different in how you fight them and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was more like an event than a fight, you know.
Yeah, because usually in Resident Evil games, when you know there's a boss, you get that health line and stuff, and you know you're in a boss battle. This one, you get into a room and like Margarita is like this fucking praying mantis thing, like going through each like window like a bug, and that's the boss battle. Then you have Jack, who's like you have to hit the fuck me lights pretty much.
Yeah, when he mutates more later, yeah.
Yeah. I will say Evelyn at the end disappointed me. Because it literally is like you put the antidote in her and she's like, why does everybody hate me? And like she turns into this big blob mold thing. And you literally just have to shoot, and she knocks you out of the house. And then you hear a mysterious voice that goes, pick that up, pick it up. And then and then you see the gun, and then you shoot it, and then she dies, and then she crumbles. So I felt that was like anticlimactic as far as like a final boss, but it was still good to see, but not challenging.
I couldn't remember it very well from when I first played it, and like when I did it again this time recently, I was like, I thought there was a little bit more to this, but I guess there wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh well. Just like it's a little disappointing, but again, the game's so good, it's not too bad of a negative, I think.
Yeah.
What do you think about the twist with Evelyn, where the creepy grandma in the house the whole time, where it's like you're playing through the game, and then like randomly you'll find the grandma in the wheelchair that looks at you no matter where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Like her head's turned looking at you, or her head will follow you.
And you can never shoot her.
Can't shoot her, and she never says anything. She'll end up in just random parts of the house, wheelchair bound. She'll end up in the fucking basement somehow. The second floor. It turned out the whole time that was Evelyn.
Mm.
What do you think about that? Did that swerve you the first time you played, or
it swerved me, but I had like it was kind of a little bit predictable in a way, just because of the odd places the grandma would be. And I'd just be like, what's up with her? What up with Gam Gam going around here, just sitting in corners and shit? And like
yeah. I was just gonna say, I'll admit it got me though the first time I played it. I was like, what? Really? Yeah.
No, what literally got me, like that shocked me, was seeing, taking off the helmet and it's Chris Redfield in a fucking Umbrella logo fucking helicopter.
And he's totally redesigned again.
Yes.
He looks totally different again.
He's off the Steiner meds, pretty much.
He got it. Yeah, and I think they kind of like decanonized this appearance with Village.
Dude, the theories were wild about that, by the way, because they're just like, oh, he's a clone. It's a clone of Chris Redfield that Umbrella did.
Yeah, the fan base went like full ham with these insane fucking theories, like about like this isn't Chris, this is a clone, this is Hunk, he's just saying he's Chris, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
I'm just like, no, dude, they just redesigned him. It's like that whole argument I got in with the fan base before, where they're like, remember when everybody was saying like they made all the female characters ugly in the remakes, which is like fucking stupid. It's like, I don't know, go touch grass or something. Like, why? What do you want? You want them to look like little anime girls? I don't understand.
Big titties.
Yeah, and I'm like, I told somebody like, listen, no character's appearance has changed more in any of these games than Claire Redfield. Every single game, her facial features change.
Yes, she's different every time.
Even in like 3D movies and shit, her features change. It's like, it happens. It's the only character that's really been like really consistent has been Leon.
Mm-hmm.
and I guess Jill, she's been fairly consistent too.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, that was. I remember that being real surprising, and I still remember when he tossed the gun down. I'm like, what the fuck? Why is this a samurai edge? And then it said Albert 03. I'm like, what? And it shot like laser bullets.
Yeah.
And it killed that giant monster. And I was like, what the hell? Like, there a lot happened in that ending that was just raising more questions than answering anything.
I wonder if a lot of things got cut in that last level, because I feel like the boss battle could have been something and like had that Ada Wong moment of like dropping the big weapon.
Yeah, I don't, especially after reading everything I read, I don't think anything was cut from it. I think they had the intention of, I guess, that DLC coming out to fill the holes, because that DLC, the Chris DLC, Not a Hero, was free. You didn't have to pay for that initially, which was cool, by the way. That was pretty generous of them. And we'll get into that shortly, I think, because I'm not real sure what else to say about the story and the characters. I mean, Ethan came to this property, and Evelyn was on a ship, and the connections, and that all kind of spilled over into the property, and she gained control of the family, and crazy shit happens. The story is not very complex in this game. It's kind of like the old ones in that way too.
Yeah, and I think this is where Capcom, and we'll get into it when we, replay Resident Evil Village in the third person, but I think this is where Capcom needs to take like a step back. Instead of just doing like mainline story characters where you're trying to like shoehorn like Chris Redfield and all the other characters and stuff, what if they just did like an anthology of people in this universe, right? Like you go to these different stories of like what's happening to like survivors. I think that would be interesting if they could do that.
They kind of did that for a few times. Like, when they initially did 2, like RE2 had like 2 different characters that weren't connected to anything. It was just Resident Evil 2, and it just takes place in the city this time.
Yeah.
And except they changed it later because they felt like, well, we got to have some kind of connection. So that's when they changed out Elsa for Claire.
Mm-hmm.
And RE3 had Jill, whatever.
But they still connected it somehow. Like Claire is like trying to find her brother, which is from the first game. So it still had that like mainline connection, even though that was like the first 2 games that came out.
Yeah,
I'm talking on a sense like nothing connects. Like you're at a Chuck E. Cheese, and like fucking zombies come out of nowhere.
That's an argument people come up with for this game not being a Resident Evil game, is that it's the least connected to it out of any of them.
And I like that.
I like it too, but like they still connected it, though, is the thing. Like at the end of the day, they did. So it's like there's still connective tissue there, and that's fine. I think there should be connective tissue in a series of games. Like it doesn't have to be super interconnected. We're like, this is setting up the next game and what happens, like a MCU thing, because they didn't really do that except for in the early days, and they disappointed everybody because they fucking skipped the climax everybody wanted. And I don't think they'll ever do that now. Like I was thinking stupid galaxy brain ideas, like, if they really wanted to like stroke everybody off and get on everybody's good side with all this remake stuff, they remake Code Veronica, and then they go into it in this side universe where they've kind of rebooted the series a little bit. Go ahead and give them that game that everybody always thought would happen, where they take Umbrella down. But I don't think that's going to happen.
I mean, I guess we can get into like the DLC, because they kind of do explain it a little bit, but like the Blue Umbrella is now like kind of good, but still bad at the same time.
I don't think they're bad. According to the documentation you find and everything, apparently Blue Umbrella is the old Umbrella Corporation. like what was left of it out of, like the remaining members after everybody fucked off and got indicted or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, and they felt bad that this shit happened in their corporation that they didn't know about, I guess. And they're like, well, we're going to dedicate our corporation now to fighting biohazards and bioterrorism, and we're going to create technology to help do that. So they did.
Mm-hmm.
And Chris doesn't trust them like that. That's made clear in the Not a Hero DLC. He's kind of mistrustful of them, and I don't blame him, I guess.
Yeah, because he's been dealing with all this garbage since game one.
Yeah. So who could blame him, right? But I mean, they gave him all his technology and weaponry and shit. It fucking works because, like, Chris, comparatively speaking, is a pretty overpowered character compared to like what Ethan can do.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he's got way better guns and shit.
Yeah.
And that whole team is like just better equipped. But
their helmets and shit. They have like visors and stuff.
yeah, they have like all these filters and there's like fucking lights and stuff, and
Night
you have to
vision.
find some. You have to find some of that stuff because Chris just doesn't have it for some reason. But yeah, basically in the Not a Hero, like Chris has to track down Lucas, who was a loose thread when the game was over initially. Like Lucas just that never got tied up. And it's like, oh, okay. So then you're kind of like searching for this guy and you're fighting Molded and stuff. And it's a little more actiony. Like Chris also punches the fuck out of monsters, which is great.
Yeah.
They kept the punching, and he murders people with his bare hands.
I feel bad for his team because like every time like he would get to one of his teammates like I'm gonna help you, and like Lucas would like take off his helmet and be like, ha, bitch, bomb. And like the head would get blown up, or one of them would be tied to like the machine and like the head would get chopped off.
Yep.
And I was like, man, I mean, this is literally kind of like Saw.
It's
like
more Saul shit, and he was setting it all up to like make Chris mad and cause him to fuck up and get killed at some point or whatever.
Yeah, and the story is like Lucas was not being controlled by Evelyn anymore, and he was like dealing with scientists with the mold and stuff, and he like pretty much fucked them because he's gone insane at this point.
Yeah, like I guess they gave him some kind of like agent or something that would break her control over him or something.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, in exchange for that, he was just supposed to monitor the situation.
Oh, I gotta bring this up from the main story. What did you think of the Force ghost talking to Jack Baker?
Oh yeah.
It's like that's the paranormal thing that I kind of rolled my eyes a little bit about. Where I was like, this is lame. I get what they're trying to say. I think this should have been like a VHS tape where obviously it does show you in the DLC that they were normal at one point and being helping of Evelyn. But at the same point, I didn't need to be like in this Force ghost realm and stuff. Be like, I ain't a bad guy. Margarita's not a bad woman. We don't like to kill. Like it's so lame.
Yeah, it's really strange. It's like the only scene in the game that comes off kind of odd.
Mm.
And like I still am not real sure like what it is or how to justify it. I guess I like to think that Ethan's having like a fucking fever dream.
Yeah.
After he's been like covered in mold and choked out or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just that's literally just him having a weird almost death fever dream. Because I mean at this point he's picked up various scraps of paper and he does know that these people used to not be crazy. He knows that now. And then Zoe, like, she tells him.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe that was just him thinking like, damn, these guys are victims too, I guess. That was playing out in his head. And Marguerite wasn't present either. That's another thing that's kind of weird about it. Like Zoe's there, Jack's there, but they're the only two that are there.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, Lucas is more hateable anyway. And
Yeah.
that's another thing is in this game, as you're playing Chris and you're trying to chase him down, it's like it makes you fucking want to get this guy.
Yes.
So like they got that going for him too.
I will say, Lucas' final boss battle felt like a final boss battle.
That felt more like a traditional RE boss battle did.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So does that make up for the Evelyn, boss event?
Well, yeah, I mean, now it does because this is the first time I'm playing the DLC. So,
Yeah.
like, it does save it in a way.
Because I feel like that's the ending for real, is like when Chris cleans up and it's over.
Mm-hmm.
Unless you want to say the end of Zoe is the real ending now.
I think they get both their closures. So you could combine the endings together.
Sure, I think so too. I mean, I can't. I don't know why you would play this game and not get the gold edition or download the DLC. Because it's all. That's another thing I was going to point out. This is like they didn't really have DLC for RE6. It was all just like stupid costumes and shit for like, playing the verses or whatever. And like RE5 had story based DLC. It had the Desperate Escape and the Lost in Nightmares. Haha. But yeah, and then like the Revelations games, they didn't really have DLC either. I mean, I guess Revelations 2 was technically a DLC driven game. But yeah, not like this where they expand on the game's story and stuff.
Yeah.
So I liked that aspect of it though.
Yeah. I guess since we're talking about Not a Hero, I guess we can combine since we talked about Zoe. So I guess let's dive into some end of Zoe. Probably one of the most silly fucking DLC I ever played, as far as like the like connecting storylines, but it's so fucking awesome at the same time.
Yeah, it's it's like all of a sudden there's another Baker fucking relative you didn't know about, Joe Baker, who's I guess he's
The
Jack's
older brother.
Younger older brother.
I can't tell because fucking Joe's beard and shit is like super white, like scruffy. So I considered him the older.
I thought he was younger for some reason, but I'm not sure. You might be right. But he gets attacked by a mold guy or some shit, and he's like flips out and just murders it. And then like those the blue umbrella people are like on his property, and he fucking captures one.
Yeah.
And he's like, "What are you doing out here?" And it's like he's interrogating him and shit. And then go on.
It's like nonchalant, like, oh man, my family's not talking to me. I gotta go check this. Kind of like what Ethan did. Like he went to go check on the family, and then you would think like weapon wise, like you would have a gun, but no, you have just your fist. You're just going around punching mold monsters, and then when you get to swamp areas, you're like getting like spears of like like stakes and stuff, and you're throwing it at the alligators because that's another enemy. And then you have this one like main kind of like a Mr. X type of person that's following you and fighting with you and going after Zoe.
And it's Jack Baker again.
Yes.
It's like what's left of him, I guess, after you fight the giant version of him. I guess he gets on a mold corpse somehow and he mutates into that thing, which you can't tell it's him at first.
Yes. Actually, I saw someone do like analyzing it, by the way, because after I played, I was like, I wanted to hear what other people are talking about it, and someone compared from the main game on how Jack Baker grabs you by the face and turns you and punches has the same animation as the enemy in End of Zoe. So that was a nice touch.
It does, yeah, it's true. I didn't really think about that much before. I like to think my theory is Joe Baker is some kind of war veteran or something, and he's also a literal swamp person because they are in the bayou, and he literally lives in like some fucking shack that it looks like he built himself out in the bayou, and he has nothing. He has no phone. It seems like he's got electricity out there, but he has no phone, no TV, no nothing. He doesn't even have guns. You unlock guns after you beat the game, then you can have guns.
My favorite thing throughout that whole thing is like Umbrella. Umbrella, which has guns and shit, right? And there's like, oh man, we got to bring this like power glove with us because it might be useful at some point, but it's useful for Joe Baker more.
He's like, "What's this?" And he picks it up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, this will work." But I was like, this guy. I think Joe Baker's been through some shit, and he retreated into the swamp. And he also knows he lives away from everybody too.
It's kind of like Rambo, where he just came back from the war. He's just like, I don't want to be in civilization. I'm just gonna be in the swamp.
He's super paranoid and shit too. It's like he doesn't trust anybody.
He doesn't trust government. Like when he had one of the umbrella guys, like, take off my handcuffs. I'm doing like Southern accent for the umbrella guy. Take off my handcuffs. I'll show you our camp. You're like, I don't trust you. You just go kill me.
I don't trust the feds. It's just like, So that made me think like, oh, Joe Baker has been in some kind of war, and he's felt slighted by the United States government. And I don't blame him. So I identify with him. But it's the tone is kind of silly in it, but like it's fun and it's different, so it doesn't matter. It's like all of a sudden there's like stealth mechanics. You can stealth kill these fucking things.
Yeah.
And you punch him and shit, kill him with your bare hands. It's like who is this guy? He's fucking badass. It's like,
I wanted more of him, which I kind of wish they brought him in Village somehow. What
if they did a whole game like that? Like, what would that be?
I would love it. Capcom, if you're hearing this, if you want to continue somehow, bring Joe Baker back for Resident Evil 9.
There's Marguerite when she turns into the creepy fucking bug lady.
Dude, that fight scene was terrifying.
It's really disturbing. It's disturbing on a lot of levels.
It felt like Blair Witch. I don't know how to like say it, but like when you go into the house in Blair Witch and then you're like, the only thing you have is the light in front of you because of your flashlight. Like that freaked me out.
That's something I didn't get to touch on in the design stuff in this game was if you really notice it too when you go from RE7 to RE8. There's like this whole found footage kind of theme aspect to the game in 7. You find the VHS tapes and shit, and then you play as like, the camera guy and stuff. And if you notice when you play RE7, there's kind of like this weird filter over the game, even when you're playing as Ethan. That's almost kind of like you're watching a found footage thing.
Yeah.
And that's not present in 8. And I kind of feel like a little bit something's lost there. Like, because they had something with that was kind of interesting. You said like the VHS tapes are kind of like files. They're kind of a replacement like for those more lengthy files. And it's like you get to just do a playable segment or something.
Well, Capcom always does this thing, right? When they strike gold, they always like try to like milk it to extreme. And like look at Resident Evil in the early days, like Resident Evil 1, 2, 3, and then it jumps to 4 and then 5, where all these main characters are part of like these organizations now that are fighting Umbrella. Like there's a bigger picture to it, and like Resident Evil Village, coming off of this, is like another bigger picture moment where I'm just like, yeah, but you lost the atmosphere now, where it kind of like Ethan goes from this terror horror type of setting to a fantasy setting that's still kind of horror but more thriller than horror.
Yeah, like 8's still got some kind of atmosphere to it, but yeah, something's lost from going from 7 to 8. I mean, besides just on the face of it being more scary, it just is.
Yeah.
I guess spoiler alert. So, but yeah, but it's also got in the different modes, like in the different characters you get to play as in this game. Chris, there's a different feeling when you're playing Chris. There's more like this desperation. I got to get this guy kind of feeling, and you feel like you're fairly well equipped to do it. It's just a matter of finally getting him and outsmarting him.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you play as Joe Baker, it's like this kind of weird cheese. The cheese you're talking about elements there, and it's almost like they made another Barry character, except he's like this badass redneck guy. And and that's another thing is like everybody that played this DLC, they really liked it. They spoke very highly of it.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard anybody say they didn't like it.
No. I think the only thing that like they I guess can kind of get criticism, but it's kind of like, why am I going to criticize it? It's just more is the band footage where,
yeah,
you know, like it does explain some story. Like I think it's interesting that we see Zoe's point of view.
Zoidberg's point of view.
Zoidberg. But like seeing Zoe, especially when Evelyn, because like a hurricane came through, right? Not the wrestler, by the way. But they like explained the hurricane, and then like the whole scene where Mia and Ethan are on the boat and seeing the big ass fucking ship in the swamp was cool.
Yeah, that was cool.
Mm-hmm.
The thing with the band footage is I like because it expands on the story some more. Some of it's just extra little playable bits,
Mm-hmm.
and you get to see like more of these characters. Like, you know, when you're Clancy and you're in the bedroom and Marguerite's trying to feed. It's more of that character who's, like I said, was arguably the creepiest character in this game, and it's just in a different kind of scenario where she's not like the psycho bug monster lady she turns into.
Mm-hmm.
It's just her normal self, which is still fucking unsettling and creepy. You're like strapped to this fucking bed, and she comes in, and she's always got that expression on her face, like she's got this grin, but it's like kind of forced or something. And she's like, "You better eat up. I made this myself." And you're just like looking at it. It's like that shit from the table in the beginning.
Did you try it, by the way? Because he pukes automatically.
Yeah. And then you have a few choices of what you can say, and I'm like, it's great.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, she gets fucking pissed at you.
Yeah.
And then she's like, "Well, I'll just leave you here to eat it. I'll be back later." She's like real sweet and stuff. And then he's like, "I gotta get the fuck out of here." Like after she shuts the door. So I forgot what that one was called, but in that one where you're stuck in the bedroom, I think it might just be called Bedroom.
Yeah.
It's just a big puzzle sequence where you have to solve the puzzle of being able to get out of this room without getting caught, because you can die, you can fail and die.
And there's certain things, like if you do the clock, it's gonna go bong, and it's gonna be like, what? She'll like hear that and be like, what's going on in there? And then you know, when you do the clock on it by the bed, it will like move the fucking bed and make sounds because there's a trap door under it.
Yeah.
But you get like a clue under that bed, so you have to like you can't. And she recognizes items, so like when you put pictures on the wall, she's like, "I put that picture there for a reason." And then,
"You son of a bitch!" She's like vomits a bunch of bugs all over you. You're like, "Oh fuck!" Oh, you lose some health.
Yeah. And if there's one drawer that you can't like put back in because it's broken. So when she comes into the door and she sees the drawer, she's like, "I know that drawer don't open on its own." It's
like she knows every detail of that room. So like when she's coming back, you have to put everything back the way it was.
Mm-hmm.
So it's funny. It's like you're on like these time limits when she goes away. And you're like, okay, now I got to redo all this other shit again. It's kind of it's kind of interesting. It's like a lightning round puzzle thing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. I lightly went through it. I think I'm gonna spend more time on trying to solve other challenges of escaping, because I think there's more, right? It's not just that one.
There's a little more. It's like you find like a whole other room
Hmm.
off to the side, and you can eventually get through that trap door underneath the bed. But yeah, there's that one. We kind of we'll jump back to the end of Zoe thing. We kind of just went right to the band footage.
Yeah.
But there's the 21 one, which is like when you play blackjack with Lucas.
Yeah.
And
I
that's just a mini game.
Yeah, I lightly touched on that. I was like, this is interesting, but like all the added shit that happens, I was like, oh man, this is definitely what Lucas would come up with, but I fucking hate this. But like, I
Oh,
thought it was
you hate it?
no, I didn't like, I didn't hate it, but like, I hated it at like the user interface where I like quickness. Like, hey, I just want to hit the button that says hit me or stay. So it was more like mechanics than anything.
Oh, okay. Like I it's a little clunky, but when you get used to it, it's fine. I thought, but I know it's just blackjack, but it's kind of fun. I don't know,
Yeah.
something about that. It's like when a game has, because this has been happening more lately, when one of these more open world games has a really good game of darts in it. It's just fun. You just want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like what this blackjack is. This fucked up version of blackjack.
Kind of like Gwent in Witcher 3.
Yeah, because I was like, I failed. I didn't succeed, and I was like, I want to play this again.
Mm-hmm.
I kept wanting to play it to where I could like win because I thought I could win.
Yeah.
There's not much to that one. There's the daughters one, and that's the one where you play Zoe, and it shows like the start of the story, basically.
Yeah.
And it's cool because you get to see the whole house before it's all fucked up and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's normal and nice, I guess, except Lucas, who's this little fucking asshole. and it's fucking scary when like they all turn on you, and you don't have any fucking weapons or anything. You have to sneak around.
Yeah, and when Marguerite like turns around, like staring at the bathtub, and she like fucking bug is coming out of her mouth.
Yeah.
And then the father like, get the rope down in the garage while I'm moving at 2 miles per hour. That was the one thing I kind of hated about that, is like there was no sprint button.
Yeah, you move kind of slow. You're forced to move kind of slow in that. But I like it, and I want to eventually finish it. I couldn't finish it. I kept fucking failing.
Yeah, same.
Or actually, no, I did finish it, but I had a bad ending. Because that's another thing. The daughters thing has multiple endings. There's multiple paths in it too, so there's actually replay value in that. There's a true ending.
I gotta check that out.
Yep. So I was like, I'll revisit that and try to really beat it, because I tried to play it several times, but I was doing it without a guide, and I didn't want to just go look up a guide immediately and figure out how to beat it.
Mm-hmm. What since we're on the Zoe thing, like what more did you have to say about End of Zoe?
Oh yeah, we'll go back to that and finish that real quick.
Mm.
Yeah, I mean, you spend your time playing as Joe Baker, just killing everything, sneaking around, and you have like these epic boxing match fucking boss fights with this creature that's Jack Baker. And I don't know why, that's like, it's kind of silly, but at the same time, it's awesome. It's just,
I feel like a normal person, like even though this is like the deep south, and most of us are 2A, pro 2A people, but like I could totally see a guy just being like, I don't have a gun on me, but I'm just gonna fucking pound the shit out of these fucking monsters. That's what Joe Baker was all about, and I dig that.
I like that he can make fucking spears and kill shit with it. Like, like what other game did that you could play besides that shitty Far Cry one that was like in the Stone Age or whatever that everybody fucking hated?
Yeah.
I don't remember what that was. That a
Primal.
Far Cry Primal?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I remember that being like a big bomb or something. Um, like, but yeah, eventually you fight. He realizes it's Jack, and then you get kind of get your ass kicked and you lose.
Hmm.
And you're not able to save. He takes Zoe away from you, and so like there's something at play there where it's like I guess some part of him is still recognizes that's Zoe, and he's trying to go make sure she gets infected. I guess.
Yeah. And what was with Zoe, by the way? They like she was like crystallizing. Like she got to a point where she was naked, and the mutation of the crystallization like put her into like some type of lingerie. I was like, what
I
is this?
I don't know. I guess she just had like a different reaction. It seems to affect people differently.
Well, I know there's
So,
3 stages, right? There's the early stage where you're kind of going crazy, and then the middle stage where you're super crazy, and then full mutation where like your skin starts falling off.
I guess maybe that's something that kind of connects it to 8 because you remember how like all the bosses and shit you'd fight in 8 or you get like crystal skulls and you get like people turn into big pieces of crystals and shit.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe there's something to that there with Zoe. It's
All that
something
all that witch crystal bullshit.
witch crystal shit.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, Joe he gets put in a coffin by his own brother and thrown off a cliff in that boss fight, which is like crazy. And then he washes ashore and he's like, "Oh shit, I almost didn't make it that time." And then that's when he finds the fucking power glove or whatever.
Yep.
And that thing's awesome. And you kind of like have to learn somewhat quickly how to use that thing.
Yeah, you get a couple of mold monsters that you could try out, pretty
Yeah.
much.
And then you have the real final fight with Jack, and it's kind of tough. I died a few times when I first played it, but then I beat him.
Yeah.
And then that's when the Blue Umbrella people come in, rush the area, and they detain Joe and give Zoe a cure, and she's okay. Looks like her hair's permanently gray though now, and
Yeah. Before we get into the ending talk here, there was one part where he had to go get the antidote and like the computer was not working, so he just started smashing it.
it's totally a Joe Baker move.
Yeah, got it, work, and he like got it to work.
Goddamn computers.
Yeah.
But the twist there at the end was Ethan apparently got a hold of the Umbrella people and was like, "You need to go back. There's one more person. There's Zoe," and he came through in the end.
Mm.
So it made it all okay. Everybody that mattered lived.
Yeah, she's like, "You didn't forget about me."
Yeah, I mean,
Joe Baker was scared. He's like, when they came in, like, put your hands up, put your hand, everybody get down. He's like, he's holding the power glove. Like, I was like, wait a second, this is out of personality. Just start beating him up with the.
Don't ask questions. Just start beating their asses.
Yeah. But then Chris came in. He's like, put the weapon down, put it down.
Yeah, they live and they, I guess, live happily ever after off that property somewhere. I don't know. And that's kind of the end of the whole story of RE7, and but you like the end of Zoe DLC overall?
I like it more than Not a Hero. I thought Not a Hero was great. I do agree with you that I had a mission. I fucking hated Lucas, and I wanted to catch him. It was kind of like a cop versus criminal kind of thing going on.
Yeah,
And,
it almost felt like something out of a fucking movie or something.
Yeah, so I dig that. But like I had most fun with End of Zoe.
Yeah. I like them. I think I like them both equally, but for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess touching on the band footage thing and finishing that, there is also Ethan Must Die mode, which is insane.
I don't like the whole Ethan Must Die and Jack's 55th birthday.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
Ethan Must Die is interesting. I like it, and I want to beat it someday. But it's like it's really hard. It's like it sits you outside the back of the house, the backyard where like the trailer is and stuff, and then you just get random weapon pickups and like there's almost no light. It's interesting. And you go into the house and there's like random enemies and sometimes they can drop different items.
Mm-hmm.
But you die in one hit.
Yeah.
So you have to go through this whole different setup of the game and hope enemies drop good items and you can find good items and try not to get hit.
You gotta farm like parts and shit that are like in the compactor thing, whatever, so that you
No,
could.
that's in the other one.
Oh yeah,
I need to look this up so I know their names more.
Ethan Must Die was the parts. Jack's 55th birthday is you have to get the food to feed Jack.
No, Ethan Must Die didn't have parts. That's when he just gets random item pickups. The one you're thinking of with Clancy, where you play as Clancy, that's where the hell is it? Bedroom 21, Jack's 59 Hero. Why is this not showing up?
I don't know. I remember clicking Ethan Must Die, and then I would be in the basement area, and I would be fighting mold monsters. I don't know. Those are the only two things I remember as far as other mini games.
Let me look this up. So, the page I have up doesn't have all of it listed.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I guess I'll like discuss Jack's 55th birthday. You begin the first level is like the beginning of the demo where you go like into different areas and you have to like find food for Jack. And sometimes you get like salt shakers and shit. And if you feed salt shakers to Jack, he like throws up because who eats a fucking whole container of salt? That's weird. But you can combine the salt with the food to make it tasty. And I was like, I get it. I was like, this is like it's something more. So like, I'm not complaining that I have more shit, but I'm like, I just don't care for it.
I thought it was kind of a fun little mode. That's all it's meant to be, is just a fun bonus mode. To, like,
Mm-hmm.
it kind of pokes fun at the game a little bit.
Yeah.
I was bizarre. I was just like, what is this? Is so strange to play it this way. And you play as other characters too. Like you get to play as Mia later and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But like, okay, I found it. Nightmare is the one where you're Clancy, and Jack throws you in the fucking basement, and it's basically kind of like Call of Duty Zombies almost, except you're by yourself.
Yeah.
You're stuck in like this basement, and it's like you can unlock different areas of the basement, and you can set traps with scrap. You get scrap generators, and you can upgrade your weapons, and you can like use the scrap you buy to set up the traps. Some traps are more expensive and more effective than others.
Oh yeah, you're right. Because Ethan Must Die is like the beginning. There's a box, and you like hit the box, and you get a random item. All right.
And
Yeah.
that's the one with the random drops. Is Ethan Must Die.
Yeah.
And yeah, Nightmare. It's just like the regular mechanics of the game, other than like this other stuff. You got a regular health bar. You can get the healing juice. I really liked the Nightmare one though. I was like, I almost beat it, and I was like, fuck, I have to beat this. Like I was kind of addicted to it. I think I had the most fun with that one though. And Ethan Must Die was just like, yeah, this is weird, and I kind of like this as a challenge thing, but I'll revisit it. And yeah, Jack's 55th birthday is just kind of silly, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's all the banned footage.
Yeah. And you have Madhouse here. Did you try Madhouse difficulty?
I did not, because I don't want to. It sounds really frustrating.
Yeah, I was frustrated on normal. If you watch one of the stream where I was fighting Jack with the chainsaw, It's kind of difficult a little bit if you don't know what you're doing, and I totally forgot what I was doing, and I lost a little bit. But yeah, I don't have anything to say. But you can do Madhouse, and I heard people say it's really hard.
It is very hard, apparently.
Mm. Uh,
Um, let's see. You got anything else about that stuff? I mean, I think we talked about all that, all the bonus DLC and all that.
no, we went in through everything. I think we hit all the beats and stuff. Some good stories and journals and diaries. Like I said, the VHS would kind of like served. There was some diaries. There was one, I believe, by Lucas. That says "fuck you" list.
Oh, it's just, yeah, he got pissed at everybody, made him mad somehow or wronged him.
Hmm.
I remember there was the one you find his diary in his room, like it's like when his room for when he was a kid or something.
Yeah.
And he's talking about how like he had a friend over and he locked him in the attic and he fucking starved to death. And I'm like, what the hell? And it was to the point that like people were like, his parents were looking for him and he didn't know where he was at. And he died and eventually started rotting up in that attic area. And then that's when like his dad noticed it. It's like, what the hell? So it just sets up Lucas as like a weird psycho from like an early age.
Yeah, and they explain that in like all the other DLC and stuff. Like he's still fucked up in the head even after Evelyn it is not in control anymore. He's a fucked up individual.
He was
But
crazy before, so it just translated over.
yes, into a monster pretty much.
Yeah.
I guess my favorite one as far as the VHS is the Mia storyline where you are in the ship and you kind of get that side story, and I like that. And I mean, I don't know if you want to go into detail, but I like that her science friend was like infected, like, good, get back to the room. And like you have to like go through certain areas, go through like windows and ducts and stuff because of the mold monsters that are happening. And you kind of learn what happened on that ship before it crashes and then gets to the Baker family.
Yeah, I really like that part of the game too. I thought it was cool when you did the flashback and you see, oh, Mia's like some kind of like trained fucking paramilitary chick, actually.
Yeah.
And
And then you get to the part where she does the video, and you're just like, oh, she does the video where she's like, Ethan, don't come.
yeah,
Yeah.
I also like the one. I like all the VHS tape segments actually, because like I like the one where you're Clancy and you're stuck in that fucking weird like setup Lucas has, where and that's how he dies. That's how Clancy dies, is he gets caught in a Lucas trap and it sets you up solving the puzzle as Ethan. I kind of like that. That was cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the thing with Mia where you play as her and she's trying to escape through the old house, which we was talking about earlier. And
Mm-hmm.
Marguerite's trying to find you. I don't know. I'm really partial to the tapes more than anything in this.
Yeah. I mean, I already said personal stories. The demo is like one of the personal stories that I have for this game. But other than that, I mean, I already explained it. I don't want to explain it again. Did you have any personal stories about this game?
I got into some of it, like how I played the demo. When we touched on that, and my initial kind of reaction to playing this game and me sticking up for it. I remember before the game came out and I played the demo as well. Like among my group of friends, I was like one of the only ones that was interested in this game. I think I actually was. It's like I told him like you should check out the demo. It's interesting. It kind of reminds you of PT a little bit. I don't know what that's going to mean later, but it's on the face of it, it's interesting, and it's not like RE6 is what I was trying to tell everybody, and nobody would listen to me. Everybody just they were so fucking pissed off about how the last two games were. They didn't want to. They really didn't even want to give it a chance. That's where some people were at, you know.
Yeah.
And then it came out, and I was like the only one that bought it first. And I was telling everybody, like, you guys gotta get this game. I'm telling you, it's more like a classic Resident Evil game than like what you think. Fuck the first person shit. Don't even let that hold you back about it. It's not about that. And finally, I started getting some traction with that, and one of my other friends bought it, and he was playing it, and he was like, "Yeah, I like this game." And we kind of had a real similar reaction at the time, where it was like, "Yeah, this was a lot better than I thought it was going to be," but it's still not as good as RE4 or something.
Yeah.
And one of my other friends, he held out a really long time on playing this game until I finally let him borrow it from me, and then he got behind it pretty hard too, like I was now, like how I am with it now.
Did he play Village?
Yeah, and he kind of reacted to it similarly to how I did. We have about the same opinion on it, where it's like, this game's cool. There's things I like about it. There's some things I don't like about it, specifically stuff that has to do with like the writing and the story, which we'll get into again soon.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I guess that's like really the only other story I have is just this whole journey of me being along for the ride since they gave me the demo and me kind of being interested in it. Nobody else was, and me having to kind of like tell everybody, "Hey, no, really, I think this is going to be good for real this time." My horror radar was going off. It was usually when it does, it's usually right.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's get in some lightning round questions here. This is where we just, have a series of questions and we don't go into deep detail. We just kind of give a brief answer. So who do you prefer to play as? So we have Joe Baker, we have Ethan Winters, we have Mia, and Chris Redfield. I'm gonna be very, very fucking biased. It's gonna be Joe Baker.
There's also Clancy if you want to count him.
Yeah, Clancy.
I'm gonna have to go with Joe Baker or Chris. Maybe it might be a tie.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna be that guy and tie him.
All right. What is your favorite boss? My favorite boss, I would have to say, is Jack Baker. And it's the chainsaw level.
That might be it. Like, just because it's the whole spectacle of it, like what you're doing. It's like you're playing that and you're like, "Oh shit, he's got a chainsaw," and you're trying to fight him, and you're doing okay, but you're in this really enclosed space, and then all of a sudden you've got a chainsaw.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, what? And then you just start fighting. It's like, I'm fighting a guy with a chainsaw in a Resident Evil game.
Yeah.
Like, that hasn't happened before.
It's badass.
Besides that, I'll give a shout out to the Marguerite fight in the greenhouse area.
Yes.
Because it's just creepy and unsettling. That's also like a classic RE boss fight.
Correct, yes. Favorite part of the game? I mean, it's gonna be fucking the power glove with Joe Baker. But honorable mention would be Mia on the ship.
I think my favorite part is going through the old house, like I was saying before. It's got like this whole other atmosphere to it. And it's kind of creepy in its own way, and you're like fighting bugs and shit with like a shitty flamethrower. I was getting like some Thing vibes from that.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, the regular main Baker house too. It's got more to do with the environments and just how memorable they are to me and stuff.
All right. Favorite weapons. I'm always a shotgun whore. So shotgun is like my favorite. But that samurai edge, man, when you unlock it, it's fucking sweet. That's my honorable mention.
The thing's nice for sure. I think my favorite is probably the shotgun is nice. I like that flamethrower. I like that fucking makeshift flamethrower or something about that. He's like, he found like a shitty pipe and like an aerosol can, and like a Zippo lighter, and he made a flamethrower out of it. And the 1911 you find, the other pistol. Did you find the 1911 in this game?
No.
It's you have to like find the parts for it. It's like I think that's one of the secret treasure hunt things. You find like an old gun, and it's like it's fucked up. It needs some work, and you can find gun parts for it. There's like a crawl space underneath the main house that you can find,
Mm-hmm.
and you find those parts, and you can like fix the gun, and you get a 1911. And it's like just a stronger handgun, basically. Less rounds, but it's stronger.
Yeah.
That's cool, and that's also just because I'm a gun nerd, so I like that. I like that submachine gun too that Mia gets, that Bizon, that weird 64 round cylinder magazine submachine gun.
Yeah, that Bison.
Yeah, it's a cool gun too.
Yeah.
The Joe Baker shotgun when you unlock it.
I
That gun's cool.
I gotta try it out. I just like pounding with my fist. Best rank. I don't think there was like a rank. It just gave you like stats and stuff, right?
Yeah, you just like you did
it. You did it in this certain amount of times. This is how many dies. This is how many restarts. Like it goes deep into. I kind of miss rankings. Like bring that back. They do it in Resident Evil 2 remake, and I believe they do it in 3 as far as the grade.
It's in 2 and 3. It's probably going to be in 4.
Yeah, so we don't have that question to answer. But now we get into the final countdown, where we do our current ranking, where it's at, where some might be missing still because there's still games that are coming out and we need to review. Zach, you go first.
I got to pull my file up because I forgot to fill it in.
All right, then I'll go first. I'm going to start from 19 to all the way to 1. At 19, I have Resident Evil 6. At 18, I have Resident Evil 5. At number 17, I have Resident Evil Revelations 2. At number 16, I have Revelations. At number 15, I have Dead Aim. At number 14, I have Survivor. This is an updated ranking, which I will explain. Actually, you know what? I'm going to leave it blank. I will wait until, even though I'm probably teasing it right now, but Village, I'll tell you where it's at when we get to the next episode in Lost in Nightmares as far as the Resident Evil games. So 13 blank, 12 blank, 11 is Resident Evil 4, 10 is Resident Evil 0, 9 is Resident Evil 7. At number 8 is Code Veronica. At number 7 is 3 Remake. And number 6 is 1 Remastered. Number 5, actually, it's Remake, I should say. Resident Evil 1 Remake. Number 5, Resident Evil 1. Number 4 is Resident Evil 2, 1998. Number 3 is Resident Evil 2 Remake. Number 2 is blank at the moment. And number 1 is still Resident Evil 3.
Oh, so you put 7 under Code Veronica? That's interesting.
Yeah, well, that's the old school me where I'm just like, there's fucking fixed cameras. I like it still, and Claire is one of my favorite characters.
Okay, we'll talk about that at a later date, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so my list, I'm currently updating.
He is. He's doing it right now.
All right, so Resident Evil 6 is at 19. With and then I have Dead Aim at 17. 16 and 18 are blank.
Okay.
They're skipping up. RE0 is 15. Survivors 14. Revelations 2 is 13. RE5 is 12. Revelations 1 is 11. Code Veronica is 10. We'll get to Village, I guess, later. I might end up revising my score a little too. RE3 Remake is 8. RE1 is 7. RE7 is 6. Then Resident Evil 3 is 5. 4 is 4. 3 is RE2 Remake. 2 is original RE2. And 1 is Resident Evil 1 Remake.
All right. So we're almost down to the final two, which is we have Resident Evil 4 Remake. And what's the other one that we have left?
What
are we missing?
Don't know. I think we were talking about doing Gaiden or something.
I think Umbrella Chronicles. You think I think that's the one we were talking about, or No, I think we were talking about Gaiden.
I think I'm open to doing Umbrella Chronicles too. I own it, so
yeah, same here. Yeah, so that is our list at the moment, and we still have Andy's there. That when he was on our Resident Evil 4 episode, he put Resident Evil 4 at number 1, and every other bullshit Resident Evil game at number 2, which is funny because he didn't play the other games.
It's like getting him to pull teeth to play horror games.
Yeah, so the next game that will be on Lost in Nightmares is the rebooted, revised Resident Evil Village, since the DLC and the third person's in there. And like I said, because of the last time we did it, it had shitty audio. So that will be next in the docket. And then after that is Resident Evil 4 Remake, which is coming out March. So
that's going to be a little while. Maybe we'll do something in between there.
Yeah.
You know?
But yeah, I think that's where we're going to end it. I'm happy you guys are, watching the videos. I do see the views that are happening on YouTube. I hope you like the rebrand. As far as there's going to be more projects that we're going to probably do, more horror games that we could talk about. But if you want to catch more of Lost in Nightmares, we're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or on YouTube as Lost in Nightmares. If you search that up, it will pop up. But until next time, guys, we will see you in the village. Bye.
Get lost.
Yes,
in
get
nightmares.
Lost. Yeah, get lost. Get out of here in nightmares.